And welcome to FPC Fantasy Live. My name is Kyle Senra, and I'm here today to talk about some Dynasty rookie drafts. So it's this time of year. I mean, the NFL draft ended just under a week ago, just under a week ago. A week ago today at this point, they would have been just about to start day 3. So within that first week, what we've seen is a lot of Dynasty leagues, a lot of rookie drafts have been starting to happen. So I'm currently involved in 4 Dynasty rookie drafts at this moment, including one that basically just started right now. So we'll kind of get to it live. Really appreciate everyone for joining today. Hope that what this episode does is provide some concrete examples where rookies specifically are going in rookie drafts. The one caveat here is all these rookie drafts are super flex. Most of the Dynasty leagues I play in do follow the super flex format, so just naturally that's where everything is geared towards. So we're gonna have that. In terms, I think really the only major difference between super flex and single quarterback is where the quarterbacks are going. As you'll see in these draft results, it does tend to go a little to the high side in terms of quarterbacks. But in one quarterback league, I would say the big difference might be, rather than have 3 quarterbacks go off as the first 3 picks, or four in the first 4, even 5 in the first 5 picks, you might get one of the quarterbacks sneak into the first round, maybe 2 or 3. So it's kind of pushing them almost a full round back, essentially, of where they are. So I think the thing to do here is just get right into it. So in terms of what's happening now, I've got 3 drafts that started this morning, although the slow drafts, so I think all of them have 8-hour clocks on the timer. So it's something where we might not get a pick for 8 hours. I doubt it's obviously going to be that extreme. But for the 3 drafts that started this morning, none of them are further than the 103. So just going to be waiting on those. However, a rookie draft I'm in did begin on Wednesday. And so that I think that one we're into 1 pick left in the 3rd round. So what I'm going to do is I will share this screen and just share the draft results. I'm not sure how good this is going to look in terms of visuals. So this league's on Sleeper. So bringing it up real quick. All right. There we go. I believe this is working. Just trying to make sure here. So with the screen shared, I don't know how well this appears in real time. I think you can maybe read the name. So anyway, I'll walk through. Let you kind of know for those that can't read names, just because I get this. This can be this is about as big as I can make this, I believe. So, actually, it might not appear as the greatest, but color coded to show the different positions. Red being quarterback, green running back, blue wide receiver. Again, there's not much of a difference between those 2 colors, unfortunately, so that makes it a little tricky. But orange for tight ends. But what we're seeing here, things really stick out, is right off the bat, 4 quarterbacks in the first 5 picks. It's kind of how I would envision this draft board if I was doing it myself. If there was 12 different versions of Kyle drafting, you'd probably have this exact same first 6 picks for sure. So to run through that real quick. In my mind, the top 3 quarterbacks all share a tier. I kind of get the sense that they will be in Superflex leagues especially, will be the first 3 players drafted. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance, the new quarterbacks for the Jaguars, Bears, and 49ers respectively. So no real surprises there. Najee Harris at 104. I have him as the top running back in the class. He was the first running back drafted in the NFL draft. So going to the Pittsburgh Steelers makes sense for him to be the first running back off the board. Next is Zach Wilson at 105, New York Jets rookie quarterback. Similar to Lawrence, expected to start right from week one, or not even expected, it guaranteed to start right from week one. Injuries, of course, training camp injuries aside, which we really hope does not occur. But if everything goes as planned, Wilson and Lawrence are both starting week one. Not sure about Fields and Lance, but as you're seeing in this draft, that doesn't really matter for the dynasty value. I think everyone's kind of firmly got Zach Wilson as the fourth quarterback. And, even though he might start a few more games than Fields and Lance, I think the expectation is both those guys are getting on the field. But even if Lance has to sit most of the year, I know most people aren't really discounting his value, and they'll still be willing to take him as one of the first three quarterbacks off the board. So, if I was drafting, this is exactly how I'd go with the first 6 picks, probably in this order: Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, then a tier break in quarterback for me, which is why I would have Najee Harris next. Zach Wilson, 105, and then Jamar Chase as the wide receiver one in this class in terms of perceived value before the draft. Certainly, he was the first wide receiver taken in the NFL draft, so that doesn't seem to change anything. So Jamar Chase at 106. Next at 107, we have Kyle Pitts, and in this league, there's no tight end premium. It's just a 12-team Superflex PPR. But regardless, Pitts at 107, kind of this seems to where I think the expectation will be. Personally, I wouldn't take him ahead of a quarterback that's going to be, expected to at least start. So even though Mac Jones, the difference between him and the top 4 quarterbacks is the rushing ability, or at least rushing production in college certainly was just not there at all with Mac Jones. Out of all the quarterbacks drafted, he had the fewest rushing yards per game as in his college career. And it was abysmal. It was like 1.4 yards per game. Rushing yards per game. Whereas you look at the top 4 quarterbacks, I know Trey Lance's numbers, really ridiculous. He had a 1,000-yard rushing season as a college quarterback in the FCS. So, that one aside, but for Wilson and Lance, Wilson and Lawrence, I think they were in the 20s, 20, 25 rushing yards per game, and Fields into the 30s. Again, I think it was close to 40 actually, but just under 40 yards per game. Mac Jones 1.4 yards per game, so big difference there. But still, the scarcity of the quarterback position tells me I wouldn't go Kyle Pitts ahead of Mac Jones. Not even if in my mind, he's clearly the 5th guy. It seems like he was the 5th quarterback drafted out of this class in the NFL draft, and everyone's rankings kind of has him firmly as the 5th quarterback. But even so, I'd still rather have that than take the shot at the tight end. Yes, he might be generational. So ultimately, I don't think it's a reach on Pitts necessarily. But as you see here, Mac Jones ends up going to 110. So Kyle Pitts 107, Rashad Bateman 108, Travis Etienne 109. I kind of get it with Etienne just because running backs also kind of carry that bit of that scarcity. So even Mac Jones 110 and then Javonte Williams 111. I like those 3 picks, Etienne, Jones, Williams. I like those 3 picks more than Pitts and Bateman personally. I think one thing in this league, it's start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. So you could maybe get me on Bateman, but again, no tight end premium and deep enough starting rosters. The tight end is a little devalued. I know I've in this league, and I was listening to me talk before, I kind of mostly avoid rookie tight ends. I did, however, in this league a couple years ago, draft Noah Fant in the first round. And I'll be honest, I have not been able to recoup that value at all. So there is risk here that if Pitts doesn't hit right away, that he might lose value. I know some people say that the perception will stay the same, but eventually if he's just the tight end 10 every year for 3-4 years, you're not getting the production that you wanted at this spot. I mean, even, just saying tight end 10, right? There's no guarantee he even gets to that. And I know some people may not want to accept that reality. But again, to me, this first round mostly went chalk. I know it's tough to see here. Also have Devontae Smith at the end of the first round. So all in all, in this draft, we had in the first round, 5 quarterbacks taken, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and 1 tight end being Kyle Pitts. Maybe the order of receivers is maybe the most striking. So we've got Chase at 106, makes sense, but then Rashad Bateman at 108. That seems to be and again, this is my first rookie draft, but just based on what other people have been saying, but also some mocks, 108 is probably about as early as Bateman's going to go. I think I'd still probably rather have the quarterback there or either running back. Again, the 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. I can understand the argument of going Bateman ahead of Etienne Williams. Not so sold on the landing spots. And then, so Chase 106, Bateman 108, Devontae Smith 112, and then the next wide receiver is Jalen Waddle at 202. To be honest, this is maybe the most striking thing about this draft is how far Waddle fell. I mean, he was the second wide receiver taken in the NFL draft. I know I have him as my wide receiver too. I didn't think he'd be getting out of the first round. I think that's quite shocking. And I can almost understand, I could get the argument behind all the players that went in the first round, but then I'm looking at 201 Trey Sermon, a third round running back in probably the biggest committee of committees. And we're talking, the 49ers, right? It's probably the most unpredictable backfield on a week-to-week basis in terms of how the usage is there. And I don't know, I'd much rather have the wide receiver that was taken 6th overall in the NFL draft with his former college quarterback. I'm not sure if that, all that depends on Tua playing well. But ultimately, I feel like I would definitely much prefer Waddle over Sermon. But I'll be honest, I don't have Sermon even as the RB4 in this class. So if it was going to be a running back taken, I would take another one. But as we see here, this is quite a range for receivers. From 112 to 211, I mean, that's 9 in basically a 12-pick span. That's 9 receivers that have gone, 10 receivers that have gone. 9. I'm counting properly. Yeah. With only Trey Sermon at 201, my RB4, Michael Carter at 206, and then Kyle Trask at the 210. But it's a whole range of wide receivers. So to run through that again. So at 112, Devontae Smith, 202, Jalen Waddle, 203, Elijah Moore, 204, Rondale Moore, 205, Terry Marshall, 207, Kadarius Toney, 208, Amari Rogers, 209, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and 211, Dyami Brown. So to me, I kind of view pretty much all those receivers in the same tier. And so they all fit in the second round. It's really here is, who do you want? Who do you prefer? Ultimately, I almost don't even have a preference at this point. I think Jalen Waddle aside, because I do have him as in the top tier of receivers alongside Jamar Chase. But for everyone else from Elijah Moore to Dyami Brown, I don't see a massive difference between Elijah Moore and Dyami Brown. So, knowing that, let's say I was at the 203, if I knew that I could trade down to 211 and still get Dyami Brown, I'd do that in a heartbeat. Again, depends on what type of return. Wouldn't do it just for nothing. But let's say I get a late second or an early third, or get that 211, and then also add maybe even a second next year or something like that, just to add to that. I think I'd probably do that. As much as of those receivers, I do have Elijah Moore at the top of that tier, but I don't believe in him strong enough that I'm certainly not going to trade. I'm not going to be the one to trade up and go try and get him. If I'm stuck at 203 and I have to take him, sure, I can get behind that. But ultimately, it's to me, this just seems like one giant wide receiver tier. And so closing out the second round here as well, at the 212, we see Pat Freiermuth. So second tight end off the board, and so far, again, we're almost to the end of the third, one pick left in the third round, and he's the most recent tight end to have gone. Only the two of them so far. Pitts is a first-round NFL tight end. Freiermuth was a second-round NFL tight end, and the three guys in the third, I do wonder if we're going to see them in the third. I know I'm not necessarily targeting them, but let's look at that third round real quick. So starts off at 301 with Jamar Jefferson, 302 Kellen Mond, 303 Davis Mills, 304 Dwayne Eskridge, 305 Kenneth Gainwell, 306 Jared Dokes, 307 Anthony Schwartz, 308 Nico Collins, 309 Romandre Stevenson, 310 Jalen Darden, and 311 Tylan Wallace. So I think the striking thing, again, we talk super flex. I got the sense, again, I was thinking the first 4 quarterbacks off the board in the first 5, and then Mac Jones somewhere in the end of the first. That held true. And this is for my team personally, I've been kind of going for it the last couple years. So trading away the picks to try and win now. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked out. But entering this draft, I had the 303, the 307, and the 407. So not a whole lot of draft capital. And in this league personally, Superflex quarterback's important. I have Dak Prescott and Lamar Jackson, and then my third quarterback was Gardner Minshew. So it's a great duo to have at quarterback, but really no depth behind it at all. And so part of me was thinking at 303 was kind of hoping to have my choice of Trask, Mond, and Mills. Trask going 210 it made me nervous, and then the pick right before, because Kellen Mond is the guy I wanted out of those three. More rushing yards per game than Trask or Mills, certainly. Trask was low. He was close to the Mac Jones range in terms of so few. It was a single-digit rush yards per game, so not really the type of mobility we want to see that'll produce fantasy points. But Mond certainly had it, and yeah, he might be sitting behind Kirk Cousins for 2 seasons. But as a developmental quarterback, I thought he was the guy I really wanted. Now, Davis Mills, I kind of forced to take him. He could start this year, which might up his value. Maybe it's a trade opportunity, or maybe even an opportunity to play if something happens to Jackson or Prescott, or bye week, certainly. So I know, and I really wanted a specific receiver at this point. It was Anthony Schwartz, and I got him. So my thinking was Mills is the last quarterback here, because if I don't go Davis Mills, I'm going to have to take Ian Book, who was a 4th or 5th round quarterback, or Sam Ehlinger to the Colts, the 7th round. I thought Mills was a really steep tier after Mills. So my thinking was, if I don't take Mills now, and he goes in the next 3 picks after me at that 307, I'm not going to get him, and I'm not going to go quarterback. And it's just kind of, so then the thought is, do I just double up receiver, go with receiver 303, receiver 307? But ultimately, I thought the value still lies with the quarterback. It's a massive risk just because the Texans, I mean, if everything goes wrong with the Texans and they're so bad next year, they could easily just take another quarterback. So there's some risk there. Maybe this is something that I got to be aggressive when needing to sell him and get out maybe a little earlier, even if it's perceived as cheaper. But for now, I thought if he starts a game, that probably ups his value to the point where I might even be able to get a future first, but certainly a future second, no problem. So I thought he had the best opportunity to increase his value. So I went with Mills there, knowing that as much as I had Anthony Schwartz, again, this is another tier of receivers where there were 3-4 guys that I was okay with. Like, to me, it was hoping either Anthony Schwartz or Nico Collins with the Texans. So either going with the Browns or Texans with the 2 receivers that went in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. Some talk definitely there. And I wasn't as low on Dwayne Eskridge as it seems a lot of people, and he ended up actually going 304. But that was another guy that I was willing to kind of hold maybe the Canadian bias, but Josh Palmer in the early third round draft capital the Chargers gave him also made it intriguing. So I was looking at that and saying, you know what, there's 4 wide receivers right there that I'm willing to draft at 307. So I'm going to take the quarterback first, knowing that at least I'll get one of those guys. Ultimately, the guy I had at the top of that tier, Anthony Schwartz, was still there. Could have thought maybe, okay, you can trade down a spot to see. Ultimately, I just decided I'm going to take it because I do like the upside. I've got Beckham in a few leagues, so this is also a good pivot off of Beckham in terms of a leverage play against him. So if Beckham can't recover well, and Schwartz actually ends up seeing the field early as a rookie, and not to say that he's just because Beckham's hurt that's going to be the case. I mean, the Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashad Higgins still have receivers there, but if he can, he's quite fast and quite athletic, so if he can carve out a role there at all, I think it's a really good leverage play, and I think higher upside than. Again, the problem with Nico Collins is the Texans right now as a team is not one I'm really willing to invest in. I did think about that. Like, okay, do I stack Mills with Collins? I mean, if they're so bad, they might just replace both next year. So I don't know that I necessarily want to put both my eggs in that basket. So I went with Schwartz. Think I already liked him as a player more before anyway. Again, basically equal draft capital. So there's that. So just to speak a bit on the running backs. So I think the first 5 running backs off the board are the same 5, and they all went 206 or earlier. And then after that, this next, like the 3rd round of running backs can get real interesting. So I mentioned Justin Jefferson went, Kenny Gainwell, Jared Dokes, Romandre Stevenson. It's kind of all over the board. I mean, Justin Jefferson as the 6th running back off the board was a 7th round NFL draft pick. Now, I really like Jefferson, but I know at that point I was definitely happy to see him go. So like I would, at that point I was guaranteed to at least get one of Mond or Mills. Because I was a little nervous there after Trask went 210 and seeing Dammy Brown, okay, and then Farmerth, okay, Jefferson, good. And then once Jefferson came in, then I knew I was at least guaranteed a quarterback. But yeah, so I definitely wouldn't have gone Jefferson there, but I also love the player so much. In my tape evaluation of the rookie running backs, he ended up tied for 4th in the overall score. I mean, I had him ahead of Travis Etienne, actually. Similar style in terms of the high burst, high speed, really good, especially outside running. Ultimately, Etienne first round, Jefferson seventh round. That clearly not going to take Etienne ahead of Jefferson. Not saying that, but I liked him to that level. Lions landing spot isn't horrible. I actually, I like him more than some of the other running backs that went this round. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell, fifth round pick. That's nice with the Eagles. Crowded spot that does like to use a committee. So maybe it's, he gets on the field more. Maybe he also gets on as a pass catcher. Jared Dokes, the Dolphins, great opportunity. Not a fan of the running back himself. Romandre Stevenson's actually the guy I have as my RB6 in this class. After the main five are kind of clear tier. I like Stevenson. I mean, he got fourth round draft capital, so earlier than Dokes, Gainwell, or Jefferson. Ends up going to the Patriots, a spot that, yes, that's a pretty ugly committee. It's similar to the 49ers, but I also had a much higher tape evaluation on Stevenson. Actually, he tied with Jefferson. They were both tied for fourth in my tape evaluation. And so I really like both. Stevenson also has a great opportunity to be a goal line back there. And, with Cam Newton on the team, that might not mean much, but certainly once Mac Jones takes over, and I'm kind of viewing that as a likely 50-50 split, unless the Patriots are doing abnormally well, beyond expectations to where they're not just competing for a playoff spot, but they're clearly in it. They're competing for a division title. Then I see Cam Newton being able to ride out the season, but short of that, I expect Mac Jones will be in there. And I think once Jones is in, that'll really open things up for Stevenson to make a lot more rushing attempts, especially near the goal line. His contact balance is great. It's one of the best in the class, again, from my eyes and what I watched in my metrics. So, yeah, I really like Stevenson. I think 309 is a great spot. I know in this league for myself, wide receiver was the issue. So maybe it's a little bit of a team need, but I also think at this point, as much as I have Stevenson as my RB6, I don't think he's a great investment to make. This is not overall a great running back class. Really pushes up those top four especially, and maybe they'll go earlier than should be and might be considered a reach. But ultimately, because wide receiver is so deep to me, I'll rather reach on Michael Carter than grab his teammate Elijah Moore, for instance. Okay, yes, one was taken in the second round, Carter in the fourth round, but the scarcity at running back. I'd rather have the running back on a team than a wide receiver in most instances, just because of the guaranteed touches. And yeah, Carter could be in a committee split there too with LaMichael P. Ryan, Tevin Coleman. But for the chance that he's not, and his efficiency with touches, I mean, he produced 1,000-yard rushing season while splitting time with Javonte Williams in college in his final season. So he's someone who can be productive without a ton of carries as well. So I really like that instance. So I'm willing to reach more on Carter. Because I'm not crazy about any of these running backs, even in the third round here. I think it's a deep enough receiver tier that stretches from the second round all the way into the third round. If Stevenson was still there for me at 407, which is my next pick, no brain locked in pick, and that might be the case where I might just take my favorite running back that's still there. We'll have to see who the receivers are on the board at the time. Suppose I could go Ian Book. I doubt I'm doing that. So it's probably a wide receiver or running back for myself there. But really, it's also showing where I really want to push my picks up as far as possible, into the first round, really. I feel like you either go early second to reach on Michael Carter, or you'd rather just be at the end of the second and take whatever receiver falls. I think that's kind of how I view it. And so maybe that comes into play with some of my other drafts. So let's check in on some of those other drafts for now. So here's one, actually. This is one of my, maybe I'm not sure if anyone's seen this format, this website before, but Reality Sports Online. It's actually, I would argue, my favorite fantasy platform to play on. Salary and contract league, so it's a different wrinkle for sure than what a lot of people are seeing. So in this one, Trevor Lawrence went first. Now this is a 10-team Superflex league, so in 10-team, a little bit less scarcity at quarterback, but also some large starting rosters. We have 12 starting players in the starting lineup, 3 starting running backs, 4 starting wide receivers, and 3 flex spots, including a super flex, naturally. And a 1 quarterback, 1 tight end. But again, with the super flex makes it that it's a 2 QB league in a sense. So just knowing that, okay, like the running back, having to start 3 does make it quite the tricky proposition. I know for myself, I'm sitting at the 104, and I actually love being at the 104. With Lawrence off the board, it makes it 2, 3, 4, probably going to be 2 and 3 are probably going to be Fields and Lance. Maybe something goes different. I don't know. We'll see how that ends up. But I'm actually really liking just being able to take Jamar Chase or Najee Harris in this format. Again, having to start 3 wide running backs, having to start 4 wide receivers is also tricky. But I think my running back situation is not the greatest in this league, so it kind of almost forces me to take it. But I'm willing to, again, quote unquote, reach for Najee Harris early because I think the running backs really dry up quickly. So I'll go early on the running backs in the first round to not have to avoid doing that in the next round. This is another draft here. The Dynasty Trades HQ 2. Expected. This is a 14-team super flex, so the quarterback scarcity is even larger. I wasn't shocked at all to see Fields, Lance go. I think those the clear 3. I wouldn't be entirely shocked to see Zach Wilson go 104 and Mac Jones really to go in this 5, 6, 7 range. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Just because, again, with that scarcity that exists, it's so important to have the quarterbacks. Again, 14 team, suddenly you're stretching out the number of starters with those 2 extra teams compared to a 10-team league where, again, I think Fields and Lance are about to go in front of me. Maybe something happens and they don't, because this is the type of league where it would be. And it's also the league where I certainly don't mind going Harris over Wilson because of that scarcity. Also with contract leagues, generally you have players you have the rookie draft, but you also have a free agent auction every year. So looking at the auction, I see more quarterbacks available than running backs, like legit running backs I can put in my lineup every week. So also thinking that probably easier to actually get a quarterback in the auction than it is a running back. So I'd rather take the running back in the rookie draft when I get him. Really hoping Harris doesn't go in a sense, because ultimately if Fields or Lance falls to me and it's because Harris was taken, I feel obligated to kind of pick them. Maybe I try and trade back. We'll see with that. So again, Lawrence, Fields, Lance. Like I feel like that's going to be the same 3 start in a lot of drafts. More rookie draft that's on right now that I will take a look at just to see. Lawrence, Lance. So Fields didn't go 102. So this is interesting, but I also think what I'm hearing from a lot of people, some people have Fields in a tier with Lance. Some people have him as like 3 separate tiers. Lance is his own tier. Fields is his own tier. I said Lance. I meant Lawrence is his own tier. Fields is his own tier. Lance in his own tier. I know for myself, with these 3 quarterbacks, I actually view them as all 3 in one tier. I think Lance and Fields have better rushing ability, better athletic speed than Lawrence. So from a fantasy standpoint, might actually be able to outscore Lawrence, although Lawrence does seem kind of the safest, most bulletproof of these in terms of as a prospect. So that, paying up for that safety at 101, knowing that he's starting right from week 1, looking at the Jags defense not being the greatest. I mean, legit, Lawrence could have very easily 600 pass attempts this year. We've seen Matt Ryan last couple of years being the 650, up to, I think 680 one year that the Falcons passed that much. I don't know that the Jags get to that level, but certainly 600 seems easily obtainable for him for pass attempts. So just based on that volume, if he has any type of efficiency at all, it's going to be great return. So I think those 3 are pretty locked in. And again, if you stretch it out to like a 14 or 16 team league with that super flex scarcity, I'm probably putting Wilson ahead of Harris. Mac Jones probably even goes ahead of Jamar Chase, and maybe it's a debate between Harris and Mac Jones for me there. Like, if it's 16 teams, I really need a quarterback. I'd probably just take the quarterback, just because if you don't have one, you can't really get one. Because usually once you're in the quarterback club, so to speak, once you're in that top tier, the only way you're getting another quarterback in that top tier is trading. I know in this other draft that I did, part of the reason that I don't have a first this year, I mentioned going forward and things like that, but I also recently traded for Dak Prescott. And now I've got a duo of Prescott, Lamar Jackson. So being able to have Jackson able to get Prescott without having to trade Jackson, I think was key. It's also left me to where I'm drafting at 303 for my first pick. It's funny because I took the Texans quarterback 303. I'm pretty sure 303 in the NFL draft was their first pick when they took Davis Mills. So now I'm thinking about it, it's almost meant to be, right? Really wish I would have had it first, though. back to this one. So I think what's going to happen here, we'll see. In this particular league, I've got the 208, so more draft capital. Look at where things fell in the last draft, though. I mean, this is a league where, it's a super flex league. Tight end, half point PPR for running backs, wide receivers, but a full point PPR for tight end. So it's actually double, significant enough. Theoretically, if Pat Fryermuth was there, take that. I remember I got this pick by trading. As you can see, it's not my natural spot. At the 12th, defending champ, 2-time defending champ actually. So that's also guiding my strategies. Likely, what I'm actually trying to do with this pick is I don't even want to really pick. I've been ever since I traded for it earlier in this offseason, trading away Robert Tonyan, thinking I did 4 free agency even in case Packers signed somebody and it totally tanked value. I thought I'd get out of him early. I've already got Kittle and Andrews and also Jonnu Smith. So it's at a tight end to where I could give away Tonyan, get the pick fluidity here at 208. And I mean, I was shopping Tonyan for almost, I think, everyone who had a second round pick. And ultimately, I think the person I traded away with the 208 had the 201. So I started there and, they said it was the kind of thing. And so I kept trying to work my way back, but no one was interested in Tonyan. So kind of sold for that as the highest I could get for. And now what I can do is again, I think the worst case scenario is that I have to make this pick and take a rookie. Because what I think I ideally want to do is actually what I've been doing is either trying to shop the pick with a player to kind of get into this early range and get an elite asset, or just trade it out for another veteran. Maybe someone, it's a type of trade where if someone didn't want Robert Tonyan, I wouldn't have been able to trade him for that. But now that the 208 can be multiple players, maybe a player that is more easily attainable with the 208 than it would have been with Robert Tonyan. So I think that was part of it there. One of the things I've been doing is trying to, again, package. One of the trade I've been trying to make is package the 208 with Jonnu Smith to trade up and try and get Darren Waller. I don't think I got a reply on that trade, so I'm not really sure. But ultimately, I think the manager's not really interested, and that's why they're not replying. Little on the low ball, but I wanted to see what kind of discussion, because I remember that person had put Darren Waller on the trade block, so I knew that they were interested to try and trade out. So I made that offer to see how are they trying to get rookies here? So again, I might pick with that 208. I might try and trade it maybe for a player straight up, but I think what's more likely to happen is I'm going to package that and another player to upgrade at a position. I think that's probably more likely what I'm trying to do. Again, 2-time defending champ, I really want to go for the 3P. I'm going to push that, thinking the 208 is going to be a developmental player that's not really going to help me much this year. It might help me next year, which is good to have the future still in mind. But ultimately, I'm thinking what I really want to do is get a better asset that I can put in my starting lineup right now. So that's how that's going. Not much progress really on the rest of these drafts. Actually we do. So here we go. In the 14 team Superflex Dynasty Traits HQ2, Najee Harris just went. So I was wondering, was this the type of league where we see Zach Wilson go in the picks just because of the QB scarcity? Ultimately, not the case. So maybe someone's going to be happy with Zach Wilson. This is another league where I trade away picks. I don't pick until 308. So it'll be a while. So this is more to share what are people doing. So this is a league where I'm not even really sure what I'm going to do. This is more of a team that's not really ready to win. So 308, I mean, if any high upside player I'll probably take. I mean, if any, this is one where Trask, Mills, Mon fall there. I'll take them for sure. I doubt they go that far though in this league. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm thinking I'd probably take a wide receiver just to help my development. I think this team really needs kind of positions everywhere. Quarterback's not so bad. I've got Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton. So I've got 3. Would like to upgrade a little bit, but it's not horrible. This is an orphan I took over last year, and it was only had Dak Prescott at quarterback, and I think Trace McSorley was the second quarterback, and Duck Hodges. So I've turned that room around a little bit. Got 3 solid quarterbacks now, so now it's time to rebuild the rest of this team, which kind of just needs help at really every position, mostly just with high end. I think my best running back is David Montgomery. I don't even remember who my best wide receiver is in this league. It's not great. I think technically Jamison Crowder on a points per game basis was my best guy. He actually killed it from a points per game perspective last year. He was a top 10 receiver for most of the season. So this is kind of saying a lot to a certain sense. But yeah, so this is a league where if I have to take 308, I'm more happy taking the 308 than I am in this other league. Have to having to take the 208 here. That one I'm not as excited about taking the rookies because I really want pieces that help me win now. In this team, it's more of a rebuild. I okay taking the 308, knowing that's going to be a developmental player, knowing that I'm not really pushing to compete this year anyway. But yeah, I don't know if there's any trade offers, any trade talk, people trying to get into me. Guess not. So yeah, so I think hopefully there's a bit of insight here. I know that there's looking at not all the draft results in, but it's just one league where again we're basically through the third round. At least gives people a good idea of what to expect in the first 3 rounds of rookie drafts. Obviously, this isn't exactly what's going to go in every draft, but giving at least a view on ranges of outcomes here. For instance, Jalen Waddle at 202 is pretty crazy to me. I don't expect to see that. I don't expect to see him fall out of the first round in very many super flex like this, 12 teams. So that's one that, if you're sitting 202 and you think you can maybe get Waddle, that's maybe not something that'll happen like that. If you really do want Jalen Waddle and you're sitting in the early second, that might be something trying to trade into the late first to guarantee I get them. Because I know for myself personally, if I had to pick, again, I think the first 5, I'd even say the first 6 picks are exactly how I would go with them. After that, I'd probably be Etienne, Williams, Waddle even. So I'm thinking, to me, Waddle at the 109, you can even justify that at the 107 right after Jamar Chase. I do have him in the same tier. So that's the range I would look for. Waddle is really the 107 to 110. You got the couple running backs, Etienne Williams, throw Mac Jones in there, Jalen Waddle. That seems like a good tier to me. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But we'll see what the prevailing thoughts and drafts are. I mean, if this is more of the tendency around, and he's fallen to the second round, that's going to be an incredible value. I would say probably the best value in this draft in my eyes so far. Maybe I'll say Anthony Schwartz just to prop myself up, but no. But seriously, Waddle at 202 is great, but not necessarily the norm. So don't also be expecting that. If you're targeting Waddle, I'm trying to get into at least the 110, but maybe even a little higher, just to guarantee that I get him if that's the player I really am after. So just some thoughts there. So, I guess also a question. So maybe I should actually answer a question from the guest. Gerson. Hey, Gerson. Good to talk to you. Don't know if it's coming up on the screen right now. Here we go. What's your opinion on Trey Sermon with the 49ers? So I've got Sermon as my RB5 in of this rookie class, but I also have him as a tier below Michael Carter. I'd much prefer Carter in that situation. To me, they could both be the Shanahan system in the sense with Mike LaFleur running the offense with the Jets, who was with the 49ers last season. But here's the thing. With these committees, the one thing you want is the player that's going to be able to get the most efficiency per touch. So on very few touches, being able to make a lot of explosive plays, get the most out of the yards. On the Jets right now, that player is Michael Carter. I'm looking, Tevin Coleman maybe used to be that player. I don't think that player is LaMichael Pirine. He strikes me as the maybe goal line back type where he, the good contact balance, good, tough player to bring down, but ultimately not a lot of speed and burst and quickness to his game where Carter has that. So even if Carter doesn't get a full complement of touches, I think he can make the most of it and be fantasy relevant. My fear with Sermon is that those players already exist on the 49ers. Like I think of Raheem Mostert, right? Like the speed that he brings. I keep pointing to JaMychal Hasty. He might not even make the team. So I'll stop talking about JaMychal Hasty as excited as I was last year. But my thing with Sermon is what is his exact role going to be with the 49ers? I'm a little scared. I know some people have him really high. Some people might even had him as RB1 in the class before the draft. I definitely wasn't that extreme, but I was a little lower on him with my tape evaluation. I know there's certainly some other guys that I preferred. I mentioned Romandre Stevenson earlier. So for me with Sermon, I think the issue is the price. And again, talk back to the draft that I had. he went the 201. That was incredibly early for me. Like the fact that Jalen Waddle was on the board and was not the pick there was really strange to me. I definitely would much rather have Jalen Waddle. And I'm looking through that tier of receivers, going like Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Amari Rogers. Probably think I'd rather have most of those players over Trey Sermon. And again, certainly would rather have Michael Carter. The point where I almost even have them as a tier break between the two. Like it's, Harrison one tier for himself, Etienne and Williams in their own tier, Michael Carter in his own tier, and then Trey Sermon as kind of his own tier. And I know he got the draft capital. He was the fourth running back taken, only one of four running backs to go on day one or day two of the NFL draft. But man, I hated the landing spot so much. It's to me, it's been a landing spot to mostly avoid. But it's also great for the really late guys because it's constantly switching, that you could make a really cheap investment on a running back that shouldn't get that many carries, but then ends up getting a lot of carries. So the problem is when a guy like Sermon gets propped up, again, early second round of rookie drafts. I mean, again, 201, he was almost a first round pick. This is a 14-team league. It would have been a first round pick. And I don't think it'd be impossible to see him go in a first round of some rookie drafts. And at that price, I'm off. Again, just looking in this draft, the 5 picks later on Michael Carter. I mean, if you were at 201, you could trade back 5 picks to get Carter. What kind of added value would that have been? Would that have been an extra second next year? Even just a late third this year to take another dart throw? So, yeah, I don't hate Sermon, the player, but I do think he's overvalued right now. And it'll have to be the right spot. I think, point per carry leagues where that have that edge, that's when I'm willing to take him more in the early second, because then you are going to raise him probably ahead of receivers like Devontae Smith and Rashad Bateman. Just that point per carry thing, it depends on the amount of point per carry. Obviously, I've seen some extreme cases. I see a lot of point per carry leagues that are 0.1, or I've got one that's 0.125. So, 12% of a point for a carry. Once you add up a lot of carries, that's when it does help. And that might be how Sermon, because I don't know that he's going to be the pass catcher there either. He might. I mean, between Jeffrey Wilson, Raheem Mostert, that's not necessarily, amazing pass catching backs either. So Sermon could carve out a role, but where I want to take him is in very specific leagues, I think. And so far, the leagues I'm in right now, the ones I'm drafting today, aren't those leagues necessarily. I know certainly for the 10-team league, the contract dynasty league, that's one where I've got the 204 and the 208. If Michael Carter's off the board and I really feel like I need the running back at 204, I could see it there, but certainly the 208 definitely. But I also don't know that that's the range where he's going in. And talking again, he just went the 201 in the one draft it was showing. So again, to repeat the same thing I just said, I don't hate Sermon, but I really don't like his draft price right now. I think he's overvalued. So again, sorry I was a little late on the question there, Gerson. Hopefully you're still tuning in. Didn't drown out, but I'm just going to quickly check again to see just any of these drafts have progressed and let you know. So far, it looks like everything's kind of at a standstill right now. So it's something for me to, again, 8-hour timers. I didn't necessarily expect to get, this is interesting. So actually, I will share the screen here in a sec, because we've actually made a picks in that one league I was mentioning with the tight end premium, 12-team superflex, and it's also what I call hyperflex, because you only have to start one position: one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, and then we have, I think it's 5 or 6 flex spots in superflex. It's that. I think it's 10 starters, so 6 flex spots, including a superflex, so 5 just regular flex spots. And with the tight end premium, it does kind of, the position scarcity is not there, so it kind of almost flattens a lot of positions, and certainly values the tight ends. Getting double the point per reception that a wide receiver gets, I think it definitely favors it over that position. Still the idea that running backs, because also there's some point per first down in this league, so the running backs still carry enough value. But interesting to see how this goes. I'll share that in a sec, because we've gotten through 2 picks since I last spoke about it. Gotta hydrate though. Yep, just sharing the screen here. And yeah, so as you can see, as I mentioned, Lawrence went first, but Lance went second, which has been a bit of a, little interesting. We've seen more Fields go, but I don't. Again, I have all three of those guys in the same tier. So, like, if you took Lance 101, I wouldn't fault you for that. If you really believe in his running ability behind that 49ers offense, it makes sense. So, three quarterbacks again, that same top tier with this tight end premium and the fact that the running back scarcity doesn't exist. Kyle Pitts 4, I don't hate it. To me, this is the type of league where you want to go after Kyle Pitts. I think in a lot of others, he's overvalued. Like, I think back to that league I was showing, the one where we went through three rounds. Him at the 107 was strange. Not that, maybe it's my perception of this league and how I've gone through that strategy of going tight end early and how it's failed. Maybe I'm putting too much weight on that, but I know I would certainly rather have Travis Etienne, Mac Jones, Javonte Williams. I know Jalen Waddle went 202. I'd rather have him. So in that league where he went 107, I'm actually thinking Pitts in my range is more 111. So he's going a third of a round too early there, where in this case, I can get behind it. I think I'd certainly take Pitts over Najee Harris. The fact that you only have to start one running back, I think it's that. Really, to me, it comes down to Pitts or Zach Wilson. Personally, I'd probably still go quarterback if that quarterback scarcity still exists, because that is the position where you essentially need to start to with that super flex spot. Not that you have to, but it really pushes that. So I'd still go Zach Wilson, but I couldn't. I get it with Pitts, going ahead rather than going Wilson. Again, I do have it as the three top quarterbacks in one tier, Wilson kind of in a tier of his own. So I get breaking up that tier with Pitts in the middle makes sense. But yeah, in my eyes, this is the league where I would take Pitts probably 105. Whereas in the other league, without the tight end premium, where you've got to start three wide receivers and the number of positions is elevated relative to tight ends where you're only starting one, that's where I'd rather have Pitts 111. So again, scoring and league settings, roster settings especially, how many you have to start at each position, where the scarcity is being created, those are all really important things to me in terms of my value. Ultimately, I think the players that are going in the first round are all going to be the same. I think we've got basically 12 players, or 13 players really, that are going as the top 12, 13 picks. You might get Waddle goes the 14th pick, but ultimately those same 5 quarterbacks, those same 4 wide receivers, same 3 running backs, and Kyle Pitts at tight end, those are all generally the first 13, 14 picks in drafts. So within there, so I think that tier locks, like even with different scoring settings, to me it's those same 13 players, but within those 13 things move around, especially like Pitts is, what's the tight end premium? How many tight ends are you starting? What's the scarcity with that position? He's going to move all around. Again, I could say 105 to 111, depending on the league settings. So just a quick there. I'll quick check with some other drafts to see if anything has moved and progressed. So far, no. So yeah, I think I'll head back. I'll check the last one. Yeah, maybe that 312 pick has been made. Line up to see who goes 312. It hasn't yet. But so those are just 4 examples, and some of these examples we're only showing 1 or 2 picks. But just to kind of give context of what possibilities might exist for people. So just range of outcomes, and again, showing 3 rounds is just showing not so much of a range, but an idea of outcomes for these certain players, of potential of where they could go. Any last minute questions, now is the chance. But I will say thank you to everyone who has tuned in and listened and watched. Appreciate all the support. Again, you can find and follow me on Twitter at Senra Says. Also co-host the Full Press Fantasy Pod at FPC_Fantasy Pod. So obviously with full press coverage here. I also write and stream with Going for Two. So honestly, buy all this great gear from the Full Press Coverage store, from the Going for Two store. Definitely check it all out. I know at Going for Two, we're actually doing a special promotion right now. Specific shirts, the No Kicker shirts that are going on, not on sale, but if you buy them now, those proceeds from now until I believe it's all week. Definitely go check that out on Going for Two, or at Going for Two, at Jeff Lambert 77 for more details. But all the proceeds from the No Kicker shirts are going towards charity this week, specifically the Toys for Tots. I know that's a big thing with Scott Fishbowl invites coming out. That's usually a big thing that's pushed there. So definitely recommend everyone check that out. full press coverage here. We're constantly streaming. I know through the week, you get Full Press Radio Lives in the mornings, Dylan and Ross Save Sports weekday evenings as well. So that 5 days a week, those two groups have you covered at two different times of the day. Ian and Mike do great with Full Press Radio Live every morning at 9 a.m. Dylan and Ross every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern, again, for both those times. So definitely check all that out at FP_coverage, at Full Press Coverage NFL as well. For myself, I also do live streams, I mentioned, with Going for Two. Monday nights are split. We alternate every week. I do the press coverage podcast. Gladys Louise Tyler also does the 2-point conversion. So just alternating every Monday. I am coming up this Monday. I got a great guest, Tan Ho, from the DLF, fellow Canadian. So definitely there's a little bit of patriotism there on my part. But again, everyone who is tuning in, regardless of where they are in the world, hope we can get some good discussions going about drafts, fantasy football players, all these happenings. I know myself, this is a great weekend for a few rookie drafts, but once this weekend's over, it keeps going. We'll start talking more stars soon. I know on the Full Press Fantasy Pod, we'll kind of get into, we've been talking a lot about rookies lately, prepping for the draft. Last episode was talking about the specifically the player landing spots and draft capitals. What I'm asking with Brad is, giving you, so you've mostly seen one of these, but the three others, I'll actually share all these results, and Brad and I will kind of go through and talk about them. So we're gonna have 4 different drafts to fully dissect through 4 rounds, just to see. So I definitely recommend everyone check out that upcoming Full Press Fantasy Pod out later this week. So check for that in maybe 5-6 days. And that'll be even more insight on fantasy football rookie drafts. So hopefully that helps you out with that. Closing in on an hour. So again, thank you for everyone who spent some of their time to talk with me. I know last weekend at the draft, it was quite an intense weekend. So now that we're here and rookie drafts are happening, it's good to take a look at them and gain that context. So again, Kyle Senra signing out, and at Senra says. So definitely I say that, and I say thank you all, and until next time.